Hello and welcome to this tutorial, and in this tutorial we'll be finally running our own Android application onto the emulator. But before we begin with the tutorial, or before we just go ahead and run the app on the emulator, the first thing which we need to remember is that we need to check some things before we directly jump into running the code onto the emulator. So the first thing which we need to verify is that if our Android SDK and JDK are present in the correct location. So you need to make sure that you have specified a proper path for the Android SDK and the Java JDK. So in order to check that, you simply go on File and click on Project Structure. So this window is going to pop up, which is going to display the locations of the Android SDK as well as the JDK. So as my Android SDK is present in the following location, so I make sure that your path is also the same. The thing is that you need to specify the location of the SDK where the SDK is actually present. The next thing which we want to verify is that you want to verify location of the JDK, which is nothing but the Java development kit. So make sure that you give a proper path in these two areas or in these two text boxes, and if the proper path is not available, just simply go on this browse button and you simply select the proper path in which your JDK or SDK is present. Now once this is done, we are good to go. And now the next thing which I wanted to discuss with you guys is you also need to install one more package, which is called as the Intel Accelerator package. Now if you have gone through the default installation steps, then chances are that you might have installed Intel Emulator Accelerator, but the thing is that in order to make sure that you have already installed it, you just simply go on to this SDK manager. So this is going to pop up the SDK manager for us, and the SDK manager is basically it kinds of manages all the Android packages which we need in order to run our Android application. So for example, the Android Studio is nothing but the environment which we are going to use in order to write Android code, but the thing is that we are going to need a lot of packages and a lot of inbuilt software for building an application. So this SDK manager is going to manage everything and all the things for us, so that we don't need to worry about it and we could concentrate on coding. So now once this is opened up, you simply go on this SDK tools, and as you could see, it is going to display us a lot of packages which are installed and which are not installed. Now we don't need to install all of these, and that is because your IDE is going to be flooded with packages, and the thing is that we are only going to install the one which we require. So this is the package which I am talking about, the Intel x86 Emulator Accelerator, which is also called as HAXM installer, which we need to install. Now if this is checked in your SDK tools, then that means that you have successfully installed it. But if you find that this thing right here is unchecked, then you simply check it like this and click on OK, and it is going to download the Intel x86 Emulator Accelerator onto your computer. But there is one more issue, or one more thing with this package, is that this package is not going to work unless and until the hardware acceleration is enabled on your computer. Now in order to check if hardware acceleration is enabled on your computer, you'll need to go into your BIOS settings. If you don't know how to enter into BIOS, simply when you boot up your computer, you'll get an option like if you press escape, you are going to enter into the BIOS, and inside the BIOS we have multiple settings which we could adjust. So for example, in this case we want to enable the hardware acceleration, so we simply go into the BIOS during our boot, and inside that we have an option which is called as enable hardware acceleration, and we have the option to either enable or disable it. So in this case we want to make sure that that option is enabled, so that we could use the Intel Emulator Accelerator into our Android Studio application. Now it is not a compulsion to install this package, but the thing is that if you don't have this package installed, then your emulator is going to run a bit slow. So if you install it, it's a good thing, and it is going to make your emulator much faster, so that you could execute your Android applications much more smoothly and in a good manner. So make sure that you have this package installed on your computer. Now once this is installed, we click OK, and the next thing which I wanted to discuss is about this phone. So basically it is going to give us a view in which we have our main activity screen, which is this, and it is also going to show the phone over here. But the thing is that if your screen is small, then the space on your screen is not sufficient to just fit this activity as well as the phone. So if you wanted to get rid of this phone, you simply click on this settings button and just uncheck this option which says include device frames. Now when you click it, it is going to remove the phone and you'll be only left with the screen. So this is our main screen where we have the hello world already written for us, and we have a message button right over here. So this is basically our application, and when we set up our own project, this is automatically going to get set up by the Android Studio IDE, and we don't need to write anything. So for the sake of this tutorial, what we are going to do is we are going to simply run this, and if we are able to run this, that means we have successfully installed all the required packages. And if we get an error while running this application onto the emulator, that means we have left something in the installation process. So now let's go ahead and just simply run our application. Now in order to run our application, you need to go into the Android AVD manager. So if you see a button right here, this is nothing but your AVD manager, which stands for Android Virtual Device Manager, and it is going to manage the virtual devices for us. Now if you click on it, you could see there are two devices. The main device is the Nexus 5, and I've created a copy of Nexus 5 as a clone of this, and that is because I wanted to keep this as original, and I just wanted to make sure that I don't mess up the settings within this. So I've created a copy of this, and we are going to run our applications on this. So now if you want to run your application, you could see there is a button which looks like a play button. You simply go on it and click on it, and it is going to ask you on which device you need to run. Now in this case, we are going to run it on the copy of Nexus 5. So I simply select this option, then I click OK, and our emulator is going to start in the background. Now if you're starting it for a very first time, then chances are it is going to take a lot of time for the emulator to load up, and that is because the emulator is going to emulate just running a brand new phone. So it is going to emulate each and every hardware part within your phone. So for that purpose, it requires a little bit of time. So if you're running it for the first time, don't worry, it is going to take a while. So you'll need to have a bit of patience, but when you run it for the second time, it is going to load up much faster. So as you could see, we have our emulator running, which shows us the basic Nexus phone, and it is going to boot up for us. Now the time taken by this phone to boot up also depends on your processor as well as the memory or the RAM which you are using, and it is going to load up the application for us. Now here is our application which says my application and hello world right on the emulator. So that's how you use the Android emulator in order to run the basic Android application. So we have successfully launched our application onto the emulator, and that means that we have set up everything in a correct manner, and we have completed the installation process, and we have already installed the necessary packages which we want for our app to run perfectly. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. Thank you.